Training since 1998. So came out of a shop prior to that, but been doing training since 1998.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know that you're just a wealth of knowledge, and so are you, Dwayne. So Dwayne Dormany is also going to be on here. He'll be moderating the session as well today. So any questions that you all have, I want you to feel free to ask. There is a chat box, and I believe Bria just put in there that the chat is open for questions and comments. So at any time throughout this, you can please write in your question if you have a comment, and we'll get to it. One of us will see it for sure. So I'm going to let you guys take it away.
All right, Peggy, thank you so much. We appreciate you letting us be here. So we'll fire this up and everything should work. All right. So that should be the PowerPoint slide. Can you just confirm that?
Yes.
Excellent.
Great. Thank
All right.
you.
That's it. Well, thanks again. And welcome, everybody. We are so happy to be here. We are Matthews Paint. We're going to do a presentation today called Tips and Tricks. So we're glad to be here with Glance and be able to present some information to you all. Hopefully, you'll find this helpful. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat as we go. We'll do our best to answer them as they come in. But we're going to roll through some different topics here. And just to get started here, I don't know if Chris Reamer is our boss. I don't know if he made the call or not, but he is actually our boss. He's the global sales manager of Matthews Paint. And he is an awesome leader for us and does great things for our company and for our customers. So we appreciate him. I'd say that if he was on the call or not on the call. So, but he is an awesome guy. So Dwayne Dormany, as Peggy mentioned, and myself, Paul Evans, we are the technical service reps with Matthews Paint. So we don't always get to be on the same in the same room, so to speak, at the same time, but we're both on this particular call, so that's great. I'm going to be running through some slides. Dwayne's going to be monitoring the chat, and between the two of us, hopefully, we'll be able to give you some information, and you'll find it useful. There's our contact information. So you'll see our cell numbers, our email addresses, and also our 800 number, Matthews Customer Service. And I will say that we have one of the best customer service departments anywhere in any industry. I just cannot say enough good things about them. I think most of us that have had to call an 800 number, we cringe a little bit as soon as our finger starts to dial that 800. But I can tell you, we've got great people. You can reach out to Dwayne and myself anytime you want, but we're not always available right away. Sometimes it'll be hours, maybe even most of the day before we actually have a chance, because there's two of us that cover the entire country, including Canada, and we just can't always take a call immediately. If it's not time sensitive, call us, send us a text, send us an email. But if you need immediate help, that customer service number, that 800 number, is the best way to go. They have a wealth of information. They can answer a ton of questions. And if there's something they don't know, they'll fire off an email to Dwayne, myself, and your local sales rep. And that way you'll have three people that can reach out to you as quickly as possible. It's all about making sure you have the resources available when you need us. So on this webinar, we're going to cover a few different topics. We're going to talk about taking care of your products. What goes on in your mixing room is very important, and it can either make or break a shop just on how we take care of things. So we're going to cover some what I think are very important pieces of information in taking care of your products. Seasons are changing. What do we do? It seems like the seasons are always changing one way or the other. We've just come out, I think most of the country just came out of some pretty serious cold weather, and then things will change rapidly. So we want to be ready to make those changes, and how do we adjust the product accordingly? And then we'll give you some time at the end to ask those questions. But again, throughout, please just go ahead and use that chat feature. We'll try to answer the questions as we go. So let's start out in the mixing room. So here's our mixing room. And let me move a couple of things. I can see my slide better. So we're going to talk about the mixing bank. We're going to talk about your primers, your toners, your clears. What do we do with those? Mixing color. What do we do as we mix those ingredients to make a specific color? How do we take care of that? In our training manual on our website, We actually have our entire training manual. I believe it's 328 pages long. It's a huge PDF file, but page 321 of that manual covers all of this in quite a bit of detail. So we're going to hit the highlights here, but that's another resource for you. I believe that this video is going to be made available to you, so you'll be able to come back and revisit it. But our Matthews website has a ton of information. So if you haven't been out there yet, please go out there, spend some time, look for resources, and you're going to see a whole bunch of information, again, including that training manual. So let's kind of walk through some of these things. The mixing bank, very important piece of equipment. So if you have a Matthews system made up of the individual toners, you will have a machine to keep those toners stirred up, make sure they stay maintained properly. You'll see the control panel. I've just kind of did a little blow up here off to the right. You'll see that on off switch. This is the latest and greatest, the most current machine out there. You'll have 3 different options. And that's going to be depend on how many times you press that on button. Press it once, you're going to get a 15-minute cycle. Press it twice, 30-minute cycle. And if you just want to do a quick little mix, 3 times will give you a 3-minute cycle. I'm a big fan of turning this machine on in the morning, hitting it twice, and letting it run a full 30 minutes. When you turn that machine on, step back, make sure all those little green flappers are moving. I'll give you another picture here shortly that'll show you a close-up of that, but make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. All those agitators in those cans are going to keep that product mixed up properly. Throughout the day, you will turn that machine on again. Really, I don't care if you do it every time you walk past the mixing room, but we'd like to see it at least 3 times a day. Hit it once, let it run for 15 minutes. Usually when I'm going to mix up a color, I turn the machine on again. Even if I just give it a couple of minutes, you can't overmix these toners. Now, your machine, your control panel may not have these options. You may have a one that just shows a 15-minute and 30-minute option, or just has an on-off button and it's just for 15 minutes. So you may have a different version of this, but regardless, make sure you're running that machine on a regular basis, keeping those toners mixed up properly.
And it's also important, Paul, I want to add there that if you turn the machine on and it is mixing, you still can pull the cans in and out while the gears are turning. That doesn't hurt a thing.
That's a great point. I'll tell you, when I walk into one of our customers' mixing rooms and I'm watching somebody pull toners off of that bank and the machine's not running, it actually bothers me a little bit. And there's anything wrong with that. If they just ran it, that's great. The problem is, I don't know if they just ran it. I don't know when it ran last. And to Dwayne's point, when you pull it off that machine while it's running and you put it back on the machine while it's running, the first thing I look for is that little flapper moving. If the machine's not running and I'm grabbing toners off and putting them back on, I may not seat it properly. So that goes back to my point earlier. When you turn the machine on, always make sure everything is working right. But I like having the machine running while I'm mixing. I have no problem because the sound of that machine running just makes me feel comforted for some reason. Now, they can get a little squeaky, so sometimes they're noisy, but keep it running on a regular basis, and it'll take care of you. All right, temperature. So we're talking about the mixing room, right? But we're talking about more than just that. But let's start there. Our application temperature should be 60 to 100 degrees. That's what we're looking for. We go below 60 and we start to have problems. We go over 100 degrees, we start to have problems. Obviously 70 to 80 right in the middle, that's beautiful. That's perfect painting weather. 50% relative humidity, that's fantastic. We don't always have that. I am based in Florida, so we get like 2 days that we can actually paint like that. And I know in your world, in your climate, you're going to have extremes one direction or the other. But this would be ideal, and it's important to make sure not only is our product temperature being maintained, but our substrate and the ambient air. They all should be very close. They don't have to be exact, but they should be close to each other. And a good example of some of the things that can go wrong, we've had shops that have stored paint in a building outside. So it's not even in the mixing room. There's another building somewhere outside, a shed, for example, and products are stored on a concrete floor and it happens to be very cold. Well, those catalysts, they require all these chemicals. It is chemistry, right? We're mixing ingredients together. They require a certain amount of temperature and a minimum of 60 degrees to work properly. Otherwise, they really don't function the way they should. So a customer had grabbed a cold gallon of catalyst off the floor, went in, mixed it up, did not realize, not even thinking about it, and had a problem. What should have been a semi-gloss sheen went totally dead flat and couldn't understand why. And it was the catalyst was too cold. It wasn't up to temperature. Another thing to be concerned about is your substrate. Do you have something that was sitting outside? Now you bring it in the booth. It might be extremely hot. It might be extremely cold. Give it a chance to orientate itself and get back to the temperature that you're going to be painting in. So very important to understand temperature, and there's going to be times that we have to paint outside of these parameters. We get that. We're going to give you some help there, but this, remember, it's chemistry. So it's not a Matthews rule. It's just making these products work the way they're supposed to work. All right, so let's talk about those primers, those toners, those clears, those new cans that you get. Your distributor drops them off, and what do we do with them? Well, number one, it's a good idea actually to store those cans, especially your toners, upside down on a shelf. If it's just going to sit there for a while, set it upside down. Because what will happen, we want you to shake that can first before you ever put it on the machine. But if you only shake it for a few minutes, and I get this call constantly, I ask the question, how long did you shake it? Well, I gave it about 5 minutes. Okay, maybe that was enough. Maybe it wasn't enough. But we'd like to see you actually shake that new can for a full 15 minutes before you put it on the machine. That's going to make sure all the metallic, if it is a metallic, all the flattener, all the other ingredients, everything is mixed up the way it should be. Because if you don't get it mixed up right, you don't really get a good chance to go back. So it's better to do it first before moving forward. Check those cans for damage. Check them for leaks or dents. There's times where you'll have, and if you can see my cursor moving around the screen, you might see a dent in the side of that can. Well, notice this agitator lid, and you'll see those paddles. Now, those paddles are just plastic, but once it gets in that can, I've seen a hole develop in the side of that can because that lid, that paddle continued to spin around and hit that metal where there was a dent, and eventually it starts to leak. I actually had a customer recently sent me a photograph of a perfect hole. It was about 2 or 3 inch hole in the bottom of his can. Could not have made a more perfect circle because something got underneath that paddle and just kept wearing that metal down and eventually wore through. And he had I believe it was a gallon of brilliant gold all over his mixing machine because it just started to leak. So make sure everything is good. Keep an eye on all these different components, check them periodically. You're going to have to change these lids from time to time, but take care of them. Make sure the cans are not damaged and won't have that problem. Keeping those lids clean. Now, I'm pretty fanatical about having a paper towel, having a rag handy. As I pour paint, I like to wipe the mouth of that opening on that agitator lid to make sure it stays clean. But even with that, even as careful as I am, you will still get buildup over time. And keep in mind, I realize I'm not a production shop. I'm not doing this day in and day out. You guys are in there, you're mixing paint all day long. I understand that can get tedious, but the cleaner you can keep the mouth on that can, the more you're going to keep it sealed up. You're going to have less of those chunks of dried paint building up. You're going to have less solvent evaporation. So just do your best as you pour it, wipe it clean before you put it back on the shelf. And it'll just make things work a lot better for you. All right, so back to the mixing the color. Again, we're going to make sure those mixing lids are all making connection, make sure those drive gears are working. If they're not mixing, if they're not spinning properly, those metallics start to settle. The flattener starts to settle. Those ingredients in that can start to separate. If you grab that can and start to mix a color, that's when you're going to have an issue. And here's a good example right here, a close up. You'll see those green little, we call them flappers. I'm sure there's a technical term, but I call them flappers. And they will flap up and down if they're spinning and doing what they're supposed to do. You'll see that green flapper moving. So it's important to make sure that is working properly. Once you pour off that can that has not been actually agitated properly, that can's ruined, or it's going to be off balance. You're going to have color match issues if it is a color toner. If it's a primer, that primer may not work properly. As you get down to the bottom of a can, you may start getting more of a flat finish or more of a metallic finish than you want because it was all settled in the bottom of that can. Better to keep them maintained than running these problems down the road. Once you actually mix the color, we would recommend you shaking it for 20 minutes on the machine or on the shaker. That's going to make sure all those toners, especially if you have powdered pearls, especially if you have metallics, making sure everything is mixed up properly. Go ahead.
Yep, I'll add one thing to this. If you have a quart or a gallon that you fill up with color and it's filled up all the way to the top, that needs to be on the shaker much longer to get everything all agitated and mixed together properly.
Yep. Great point. The more space there is in that cup, the more airspace, the more it'll break up and mix together better. When it's tight in there, it's going to need more time. The nice thing about a lot of the disposable cups out there now is you can actually see through the side and you can know if those colors are getting mixed up properly. But again, going back to those pearls, going back to the metallic, making sure those ingredients are all mixed up, it's going to take some time. There's a typical air shaker that you'll see in most of our shops. That's what they're using. And if you're using a disposable cup system, for example, this is the 3M PPS cup, they actually do make a shaker collar. So you can take that plastic collar, and many of you that are out there right now that have done this trick have probably taken a used core on a roll of 2-inch tape and put that over there as a sleeve, but they actually make a specific tool called a shaker collar that will go on top of that PPS cup and hold everything nice and secure in that shaker. Now, again, maybe not every color is going to need this, but this is the best way to ensure success across the board. All right, now when it comes time to start actually catalyzing and reducing the paint, this is going to make it ready to spray, right? So we don't want to guess. We want to use a mixing stick. We want to use mixing cups or our paint manager software to make sure we're doing it accurately. Now, I always like to ask the question, if you have a paint mix ratio of 3 to 1 to 1, like most of Matthews paint products are, does it matter which order you put the catalyst and reducer in? They're both one part, so does it matter which one you put first? We always recommend catalyst being the before the reducer. So the second ingredient would be your catalyst. So your paint, then catalyst, and then reducer. Now, the reason for that is that paint is relatively easy to pour accurately. It's not real thin. You can pour it to the line, whether you're using a mixing stick or a mixing cup. That's pretty easy to hit the line. Catalyst is actually pretty easy too, especially if you're pouring out of a quart can. Those are quite easy to pour. Gallon cans can be a little trickier, especially when they're full, but most of you out there probably know the trick. Turn that gallon can on its side and then make sure that the opening is to the top. It'll pour a lot easier, it won't glug as much. I'm not a fan. I should have put a picture of one of the little pour spouts in here. I didn't. I'm not a fan of those little add-on pour spouts. For reducer, it's okay. You don't really need it, but it's okay. But for catalyst, not a fan. I want to keep the original cap on the catalyst can. That keeps it sealed up. It keeps it clean. I don't like using the spouts because none of us clean those spouts. They never pour fast enough anyway. We end up cutting them open to make them pour faster, and then the little cap won't fit on the end. So bad thing for catalyst. Don't use them. Turn that can sideways and you'll find that's a great trick. But you can pour catalyst pretty darn accurate and then hit the line, whether it's the stick or the cup. Or you can use Paint Manager if you're using our software, and it will tell you as you're pouring, it'll register exactly by the computer how much is in there. It'll let you know where you are. Now, reducer, a little bit different. It's thin, it's a little sloppy, splashes around. That's why we don't like to pour reducer second. If you are pouring into a cup, immediately your lines get covered up by paint splashed on them. So, but the thing about reducer, you don't have to be as accurate as the catalyst. A little more, a little less isn't going to hurt anything. But that catalyst to paint ratio or catalyst to primer, the A and the B component, whatever you're spraying, that's an important relationship, and they should be as accurate as possible. One of the things to point out, looking at these sticks and cups and different ways of mixing paint, you'll notice that the stick is next to a quart can in this example. Those sticks are designed to be used in a straight-sided can. The plastic cups you see in the middle, they have a taper. That means that they're smaller at the bottom, they're wider at the top. But all the lines have been calibrated for that taper. Never use a mixing stick in a tapered cup, because it's not going to give you the right mix ratio. You're going to end up with more catalyst. You're going to end up with more reducer in that can or in that cup than you need. So stick goes in a straight-sided cup. Otherwise, follow the lines on the plastic cup, or best case scenario, using our Paint Manager software. Yeah. Go ahead.
320, it's 322, Paul, just letting you know.
Gotcha. All right. So seasons are changing. What do we do? We're always going to hit this probably every webinar we do. Check your reducers, check your accelerators, make sure you have what you need. Reducers are critically important. Never use reducers to speed up a job. Reducers are going to give you application time. They work off of evaporation. And you're going to hear Dwayne and I say it over and over again. Whatever temperature range you think you need based on this chart, because all of our reducers have an evaporation rate, they all fall into a temperature range, and you'll notice there's overlap on this chart, but it's better to go to a hotter temperature range reducer than the other direction. It's always better to work with something that's drying a little bit slower, because that gives you more application time. It gives you better leveling, better appearance, better adhesion. If it's drying too fast because the reducer that you chose is for a cooler temperature than the temperature than you should be using based on your temperature, it's never going to work the right way. It's going to give you a blotchy finish, an uneven look. It just makes your job harder. You'll actually find that you're going to work harder trying to spray that product. If you use a reducer that's going to evaporate a little bit slower, gives you more working time, it actually does more work for you. If I'm doing a little panel that's 1 foot by 1 foot or 2 feet by 2 feet, I can follow these guidelines on this chart. But as soon as I start getting to that 3 or 4 foot mark or larger, that a customer this week was doing 27 feet by 6 feet, that's a huge panel. And they've got to slow it down. You need that reducer working for you. So the size of the job is going to be even more important than temperature. And can you use a hot temperature reducer at 60 degrees? Yes, you can. Here's a couple things to be aware of. These are conventional reducers. We have these charts on our website for low VOC reducers as well. We always talk about conventional on these webinars just because they're more popular. Most of our customers are using the conventional products. We eliminated the 6379 cool temp reducer a couple of years ago. We recommend 45280 all the way down to 60. It's just worked better. We've always known that. We've always taught it. We've preached it. And then we finally just decided, let's eliminate the 6379 cool temp reducer. It causes more problems than it helps. So let's move to 45280 as your starting point. So your winter accelerator, or excuse me, reducers, 45280, 45290. Summertime, you're going to be 45290, 6396, depending on where you are. You may even need to bring some retarder into it, 45251. And hot climates or very large jobs, that can help you tremendously. Now, there is a little note right here at the bottom of the page. It would be mixed up to 50-50 with 6396. So you would blend these two together basically as a 50-50 blend, and it becomes your one part of reducer. So use the reducers for your application. Make your life easier. Accelerators, This is where it's going to help you speed up the curing process. Accelerators help the curing and the cross-linking. They speed it up from the inside out. So use the slower evaporating, hotter temperature reducers for your application time. Use your accelerators now here to get the cross-linking going, and life is good. So when the temperature drops too low, we prefer you didn't spray below 60 degrees, but we know sometimes you're going to have to. Definitely bring the accelerators in. We did eliminate one accelerator, 47117. There's still some of it out there. I see it now and then, but it was never a great accelerator. That's why we discontinued it. The MAP LVA 117 is for low VOC. So that kind of narrows down your conventional options to 287 437 standard strength and 287 484 turbo. Turbo is personally my favorite, but if you're not comfortable with accelerators or you're not used to them, start out with 287 437. Standard strength, get comfortable with that, and then move up to the turbo. Just remember that turbo, 287 484, 3 times stronger than your standard accelerator. These charts we have available on our website, the beauty of this chart is there's no guessing. Once you mix up your paint, ready to spray, paint or clear, you look at how many ounces you have in your cup. And let's say, for example, I've got 21 ounces of ready to spray paint in my cup, and I'm going to use my standard 287 437 accelerator. I'm going to weigh in by grams, 28.4 grams. It tells you exactly how much to put in. Don't get hung up on the 0.4. You can actually be off by a gram in either direction, not that critical. You can't pour to a line any closer than you could with grams. Grams is very, very accurate. So don't get real hung up on that. We built this chart off of Paint Manager, so we built it to be accurate. But this way, if I'm making 7 ounces or if I'm making 27 ounces, I can have the right mixture. Great chart. It's one of the best things we ever did. A customer suggested it. We created them, and I love these charts. I use them personally all the time. So that's a little bit about our accelerators. So with that said, I think, yep, this is conventional. So we talked about that. All right. So that kind of wrapped up things pretty quick as far as our content. Dwayne, what's our time now?
3:28 time now. Chat is open.
Okay.
So questions, fire away.
Yeah, anyone have any questions, feel free to type in that chat box.
What is the dry time of turbo?
Okay, so dry time of turbo. Let's talk about tape time. That'll kind of give you a better idea, because dry is kind of a general term. If I'm not using accelerator, you really need about 24 hours before you tape on our paint. If I use standard strength accelerator, that's going to cut that down to about an hour. Turbo is going to get you down to about 45 minutes, meaning I can actually put tape on turbo in about 45 minutes. And that's at 70 degrees. So film thickness, temperature, humidity, all that plays into it. But it will definitely speed up your product tremendously. And if you look at, I like to always use the pot life as a great way to illustrate how much it speeds up the curing. If you look at the pot life of our normal top coat, our conventional top coat, it's 8 hours. You can mix it up now, and 8 hours later, you can still spray it. But when you put turbo in it, your 8 hours goes down to 1 hour. That's how much faster that product is cross-linking. So we'll do in our training classes, we pretty much use turbo in every training class. We do a tape demo where we'll start putting tape on it in 30 minutes, which is faster than we recommend. But just to show you, hey, 30 minutes, maybe there's a little bit of tape tracking. 45 minutes, we're golden. Putting tape on it with no tracking, and it works really well.
Excellent.
All right.
But yeah, that's the only question that, oh, amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, that's the only question that came in. So we're available. You have our contact info. Feel free to reach out if you got any questions in the future.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. Thank everyone for joining, and thank you all for sharing all your knowledge and putting this together. I think this will really help our sign shops. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate y'all.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.